What's up, guys? We're doing another fun video today. We're going to be reacting to a discussion that is near and dear to our hearts. I think when I saw this, I knew, okay, I'm going to be reacting to this one. It's a discussion between a guy named Paul from the channel P.F. Young and Peter Boghossian, who is a, I guess, contemporary author and thinker when it comes to politics, when it comes to philosophy. And they're going to be talking about, are there any limits to rationality? So, of course, thank you, YouTube, for hooking me up with this recommendation. I believe I tried to talk to P.F. Young. I tried to reach out to him because he was making some anti-rationalist criticisms that were somewhat in alignment with Gebser, so I wanted to kind of help him out there. But, yeah, it should be fun. And is there anything else I need to say beforehand, or should we just get into it? On my last reaction video, I got a little bit of criticism that I paused and interrupted the conversation too much. I think that's fair to an extent. So I'm going to try my best to kind of let them talk. But the whole point of this, obviously, is to give my ideas. And my main idea is this conversation is why Jean Gebser needs to be spread among the masses. Paul, if you're watching this, you need to read Jean Gebser, all right? We will circle back to this, but you could have defeated him in terms of arguments. He's not giving you anything particularly special here, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Yeah. So maybe my question is, what do you think of, do you think there's a risk of we overemphasize rationality and its importance in administering what the word, I forgot the terminology used, cultural interventions, wide-scale interventions? Do you think we overestimate how necessary rationality is in that?
No, I think we underestimate it. But let me give you an example, if I may. Yeah. So you keep laughing.
Okay, so first of all, we both overestimate it and underestimate rationality and its importance simultaneously. We overestimate it, obviously. This is what Peter does. He's a rationalist. He has decided that he is going to take the entire world, which constitutes the quantifiably measurable and consciously known, the quantifiably measurable and consciously unknown, the quantifiably immeasurable and consciously known, the quantifiably immeasurable and consciously known, and qualitative valuations, including all this other stuff, all this immeasurable stuff. And he's going to cram that into the quantifiably measurable and consciously known. He's going to take a mode of thought that is limited to space, and he's going to impose spatial limitations on the world where it simply doesn't belong. So yes, we are overestimating rationality in a sense, rationalism. That's what my whole channel is about. But we're also underestimating rationality insofar as it doesn't take a ton of engagement with the contemporary political world to realize that we've regressed. You know, as much as I would love to say we've transcended into efficient 40A rationality, we just haven't. We've regressed. And a lot of what could be fixed with efficient rationality. So we both overestimate and underestimate rationality simultaneously.
No, it's good. Listen, there's nothing more interesting than people who I admire and are intelligent who are saying things that I disagree with that I'm pretty sure I'm right about. But you know, okay. I need to articulate it properly.
Okay. Well, we are both on the same page then. So let me tell you. I think we can have both of our cakes and eat it too. I think we can have the primitive amygdala part of our brain latches on to ideas, you know, the kind of the vestiges of, you know, pre-advent of grain 10,000 years ago. And I think we can have the more modern. So this is how I look at it. And let's see if we can find points of agreement here. Yes, it is true that, or actually, let's even back up so that there are good memes and bad memes. That is, I'll define a good meme as something that leads to the flourishing of society. We can bracket just broadly, you know, consequentialist objections or what have you. And a bad meme is something that leads to kind of misery, despair, immiseration, etc. Broadly, would you agree with that?
I would even be more specific and say a good meme is one that serves genetic fitness, and a bad.
Ooh, I disagree with this. I disagree with this at least in part. The idea that genetic fitness is like the end-all be-all of our life and there's nothing else. I mean, in Gebser's language, it's pretty obvious what's happening here. We have the mental structure, rationalism, and the magic structure. We know the connection between these two. Both emerged from the preceding discovery of something external. And the magic structure in our pre-rational faculties, it would be just the world. And then mental, of course, would be objectified space. The idea, there is so much more to the world than just genetic fitness. I mean, there are the demands of the mythical structure, which is tied to soul. So there are all these demands of the soul. We need art, we need beauty, we need mythology, we need wisdom, we need all these things. And we also need something else. We need morality. What's the point of just doing genetic fitness the whole time if that leads to just a kill or be killed? All of a sudden we're just genociding all these other groups because, hey, everything's about genetic fitness. I mean, what does that say about human beings? Why even bother? I very much disagree with this idea that a good meme is that something that enhances genetic fitness. Sometimes a good meme can be something that decreases the likelihood of genetic fitness. If I'm let's say, and this is just hypothetical, let's say if group A is subjugating, enslaving, and holocausting group B, right? And let's say I'm watching this and they have me as prisoner, and I think this is I think this is an aberration. So they point a gun to my head and they say, you're either going to die right now or you're going to participate with us in this subjugation of this group of people, of men, women, and children. What I'm going to say is, I put the bullet in my head right now, my friend. I'm not doing that. I mean, what's the point of doing that? So the good meme, in my opinion, would be a moral stand and a spiritual, virtuous stand in the face of this terrible situation. Now, let's say I do get killed, because that's what's going to happen. And let's say the liberators, whoever that is, Group C, comes in, liberates the group, they kill Group A, they're all bad. And now, someone who was being oppressed, now that they're free, they might see that. And they may go back to their family, their loved ones, and be like, listen, there's this guy out there. He sacrificed it all. He sacrificed his life just not to participate in us. So now my story becomes mythologized. There's a certain degree of wisdom, especially in this case, it would be spiritual wisdom, that now can be transmitted throughout cultures, through other cultures, through our own culture, through time. The point is, there's far more to the world than just mere genetic fitness.
Bad meme is one that undermines genetic fitness, which is this is what Brett Weinstein would point out as memes are actually extended phenotypes of the genes.
Yeah, so that's why I didn't want to go down that area, because that lets in a whole range of consequentialist arguments that I'm not comfortable with.
Okay.
So for example, we should commit genocide against people like, we call them Roma now, they used to call them gypsies, who, like, if that serves something useful.
I see what you're saying. Genetic fitness is not the final arbiter.
Yeah, so I think even thinking that way, it's not a positive heuristic. That's why I was framing it in the most broad possible terms.
Yeah, let's go with you. And maybe we can come back to...
That's a quick lesson, by the way. There is a benefit sometimes in defining things in broad possible terms. And it's interesting when you said human flourishing. I mean, that's a qualitative evaluation, to be clear. That's not strictly rational. But nonetheless, like, for example... when people ask me what art is, I tell them, look, I'm not going to degrade the spiritual utterance that is art by assigning it a singular functional definition. Nonetheless, you do have to have, you kind of have to do that to have an intelligible discussion. So anytime anyone asks me what art is, I just say it's of and for the soul. It's necessarily vague because it has to encompass the whole that is overly complex. So, okay, let's go, Peter. Based anti-rationalism.
That, because we can.
My thinking was that if we can find a point of agreement, then we can go to the next step and keep going until we can really hash out what the disagreement is. So, so then there are good memes and there are bad memes. Good memes lead to flourishing, and bad memes don't lead to non-flourishing, because there can be neutral memes, like funny little
TikTok trends.
Yeah, stuff like that. Bad memes lead to immiseration. I'm thinking like the only
Nazism,
example
communism,
I can give is
radicalism.
Yeah. Okay, so then the question is, I think we should both agree that we should construct society and institutions in such a way that the means of error correction are enabled and protected. So as long as we protect the means of error correction, I think we can agree on this. And maybe a way to kind of lubricate the conversation is, those gold sieves that they used to just have when they panned for gold. If you looked at that in terms of a filter in which you dropped moral propositions in, or you dropped memes in, the method of error correction does not mean that no bad memes will get through. It just...
Okay, so what Peter is gesturing at here is this idea that Peter Sloterdijk and John David Eber call a cultural immune system. So it's a pretty simple concept, right? Same function that an immune system has for the human being, prevents you from getting sick, keeps the body healthy. Same thing with culture. Here is the problem that Peter does not want to acknowledge. The best way of doing this, and no one wants to acknowledge this besides the Christians, is religion, okay? Religion, if you've read my Substacks about mythology, if you've watched my videos about mythology, you'll know one of the main functions of religion is that it protects the individual and the collective from the tragedies of the real. So that would be death at childbirth, right? Death of children. Maybe Katrina or some giant flood or tornado comes and destroys. Maybe you're attacked by a group of marauders or the Glanton Gang or something like that. Disease and getting amputated, all these things. This is what religion helps protect. That's one function. And another function it does, it also protects invading hostile ideologies, right? So Peter and I, we very much do not like the far left woke stuff. Say what you will about the Christian right, or just Christianity in general. And I have tons of criticisms of Christianity. But say what you will, that would never, ever have come about if 95% of us, maybe even 85% of us, were all Christian. This only comes about because the woke stuff, that is, though, if you just ask them, they'll tell you it is fundamentally antithetical to Christian values and everything that has been built from Christian values. If you don't like extreme other religions coming in, the only reason they're present and efficacious in our culture is because our border, if you will, figuratively, of religion has been deconstructed, and you're the one who deconstructed it. You're the one who wrote the book, A Manual for Creating Atheists, and now you're whining that religion, or you're whining that the inevitable consequences of that are emerging. Of course, if you just think in this sort of cringe new atheist, Reddit atheist way that there's nothing good about religion at all because it all touches on the soul and all that stuff and all this immeasurable stuff. Okay, well, this is what you're going to get, right? Like, it's one of the main reasons. So you'll have to excuse me if I take some frustration with someone who tore down the defense system complaining that they're undefended. It's a little frustrating.
This means that it's less likely that bad memes will get through. And so as long as we can construct societies and institutions that allow for that, so once you have blasphemy laws or political correctness or what have you, bad memes become more sticky.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
He's right about that. To be clear, when I say religion is the most effective cultural immune system, I will give it that, but that does not mean it's perfect. Blasphemy laws originated with religious intentions, not free speech problems. Okay, that's not secular atheist problem. That's the Christian problem. So I'm not a Christian, but if I were a Christian, I would like all the good stuff and drop all the bad stuff, which is say this blasphemy stuff, it's got to go. All right, it's nonsense. He's correct on this.
Oh, is that clear? Was I clear?
Yeah. I mean, and this is the whole point of the First Amendment being, I would describe as sacred. That freedom of speech is the fundamental mechanism for error correction, and that's why free speech is so important. And what Peterson would point out is that that is what's encapsulated in the Bible by identifying Jesus with the Logos, that it is the Word that brings forth habitable order in all of his, Petersonian language. So I would 100% agree, because the ability to speak truthfully, to look out in the world, have awareness, not just like logic and rationality, but awareness. And then to articulate that must be protected at all times. Yes, that would be the ultimate meta meme.
And institutionalized.
Correct, which is another interesting point that I actually think is missing from my kind of applied sociological framework. Is I discount the role of institutionalization and institutional structures in the spread of memes, because I'm only viewing it sort of psychologically. Like, here's a meme, if someone comes into contact with it, what is the psychology of, whether it's causing it to stick? But what I miss out on is the spread of memes happens through all kinds of institutional or mechanical kind of ways, and that's very important too.
Yeah, so everything depends on what you mean by institutionalizing. What do they call it? Feedback systems, or I can't remember what they called it. I disagree with Peter if he only sticks on this secular, rational way of doing it. It's not going to happen. When your feedback system, when your cultural immune system is anchored in spirituality, it's anchored in something greater than you, it's simply less likely to allow these bad memes to be filtered in that you're rightfully pointing out and criticizing. So everything depends on what you mean when you say institutionalize these feedbacks. If it's just this legal, secular way of bureaucracy, it's never going to work. Having said that, some of these institutions that we have, I would argue a lot of them, most of them, their origination was not, they were not originated by rational thought alone. We'll put it that way. Even something as simple as marriage. Marriage came about through experience. People experience, hey, if we're going to raise our children, we have to be tied together. We have to be here. We can't afford to just, you go off and do your thing, you go off and do my thing. They've been doing that for a while now. They've been doing that way before any sort of rational Christian or rational secular thing going on. There are tons of traditions and myths that have become institutionalized that, I would say, that have nothing to do with rationality, but they touch a different aspect of the human condition.
So
yeah, and even within that, and not to flog a dead horse, if you will, one of the most important places where the method of error correction has to be preserved is any place that is an engine of knowledge production, specifically universities.
Problem. This is a big problem. Universities are not the only knowledge production out there. Universities cannot give you knowledge of the soul. They cannot give you wisdom. They cannot give you these truths that are simply deeper than what the universities offer. They can't give you that. You know what institution that is based on tradition and myth that can give you that? The church. Now, when I say the church, I don't necessarily mean the Christian church. I just mean any sort of religious church. These are communities that have been through so much experience and they have transmitted so much wisdom that they produce knowledge. They just produce knowledge on a plane that's higher. But unfortunately, that plane is quantifiably immeasurable and consciously mostly unknown. So the rationalist that Peter is, his only idea of knowledge is rational secular knowledge.
And so in the last decade, the method of error correction was trammeled upon. Anybody who they didn't like your opinion or your questions, offices of equity, diversity, and inclusion, Title IX investigation, they were weaponized against dissenters. And so, Obama put those rules in, and there were initially good reasons for those to protect rank bias, etc. So I think we have a common agreement on preserving the method of error correction, why that's important. Maybe we can spill into the institutionalization of that. And then the next question becomes, I think I know what the next question becomes. What do you think?
Well, so maybe on the preserving the means of error correction. So free speech, the truthful exchange of ideas is the fundamental means of error correction. That's for sure. However,
you don't even need truthful. You just need the ability to you need to have some mechanism that allows a dialectic.
Sure.
Okay.
But then and this is what I was pushing back on with Brett, is you could make the case though that the anti-rationality or the not, I would say blasphemy is too strong of a word, but like memes that contain within them like forbidden, things to do. Maybe that's actually necessary because of the limits of human rationality. So the idea is...
Okay, it sounds like they're going to get into this, which is wholly applicable to what we're talking about, but they kind of get lost a little bit. That's not a criticism of these two guys. I mean, I get lost in conversation too. We are going to skip forward to the section called Peter Caught Me in a Performative Contradiction. This will be good.
If you may, we don't know each other that well, but I'm going to accuse you of something now. I'm going to accuse you of what Jürgen Habermas accused Jacques Derrida of doing, a performative contradiction.
Okay.
So you are caught in a performative contradiction. So you're using reason to deconstruct reason. You're using the very tool and the very thing to deconstruct the thing itself, which is, again, a performative contradiction. So the way that you would figure out any of that is through reason. It's not through tradition, because tradition is, by definition, inherently sticky.
Well,
Paul, my man, you gotta read Gebser. You gotta read Gebser. Or I prefer you read Gebser, but go watch my Kill Rationalism, How to Argue with Rationalism Why. We get directly into this. You concede on this point you don't have to concede on. You are not using rationality to deconstruct rationality. You are using a rationality to deconstruct rationality. To understand how rationality operates automatically, to understand the methodology in an intimate way, that's not rational. That's not being rational. That's irrational. You're not in the waters of rationality. You are the fish taken out of the waters, and you're saying, oh, this is how the waters work. This is how the river works. I see. The river is rationality. You're the fish out of it. That's irrationality. You are not being, you're not being contradictory. And even if you were, the whole point of being transcending rationality is that if you caught me in a contradiction, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Okay, imagine Einstein comes up to you and he goes, good news, boys. It's not space and time anymore. It's space-time. What do you think Peter's going to say to him? That's not possible. Why is it not possible? Because logic said so. Yeah, but it corresponds to reality. Yeah, but I have an a priori projection that I want to impose on the world no matter how useless it is. And I have to go with that because I'm a rationalist. You don't have to do it. It's like saying the yin and the yang is a contradiction. It just misses the entire point. It's a contradiction when you frame it as such. Now, if this projection illuminates the natural order of the world and allows us to participate in that order, great. But in this case, it doesn't. You conceded on a point you did not have to concede on.
I guess I'm using reason to identify what I believe the limits of reason are, and then I'm deferring to tradition for things that I think are beyond our reason, like the whole should we allow AI child abuse to be legal or not. I think we agree.
Well, what would be beyond reason?
I have been waiting the past 2 years for someone to just, next time, if you guys ever see me at like the grocery store or something, just pretend you don't know me and just kind of tap me on the shoulder and be like, hey, guy who's buying Doritos, what do you think the limits of rationality are? Have you ever thought about it? It's like going up to, like, I used to date this girl. She was into like makeup. And she could tell you like the subtle nuances between, like, I would look at the two, I'd be like, oh, they're the same color. She was like, no, subtle nuances. It'd be like her being at a ball game and just some girl being like, hey, real quick, can you tell me the differences between this contour and this contour? I don't know, I don't do makeup. What is outside of reason? By reason, he means rationality. Great question, Peter. Anything outside of the quantifiably measurable and consciously known. That includes our pre-rational faculties, including our phenomenological experience when viewed from that perspective, our mythical capacities, our irrational capacities, and our irrational capacities. It doesn't understand time, it doesn't understand myth, it doesn't understand art, it doesn't understand poetry, it doesn't understand anything outside of the Cartesian coordinates. It doesn't understand tradition, as evident by this conversation. It doesn't understand the soul. It doesn't understand spirit. It doesn't understand the psyche. The psyche does not operate according to this sort of mechanical linear causality. It doesn't understand the new sciences. It doesn't understand the dual sciences. It doesn't understand anything. No. Obviously, that's not true. It understands a lot. But yeah, it doesn't. For example, let's talk about this tradition real quick. I'm writing a Substack on this. Let's say in my country we have a tradition revolving around the Hydra myth. So the Hydra myth is Heracles. He faces the Hydra, the serpent, the snake, and this serpent usually has 9 heads. And the head in the middle is the immortal head. It cannot be destroyed. So what Heracles does is he's tasked with destroying this serpent, or else the serpent is going to destroy him. So he takes his sword and he starts cutting off the heads. And every time he cuts off one head, 2 heads grow back. So he says, that's weird. So he cuts off the head again, and then 4 heads grow back, then again, then 8. And it just keeps going, right? So eventually, he realizes, wait a second, the traditionally rational, linear, causal explanation, there are times and moments in life where that simply will not work. And more than that, not only will it not work, it'll actively produce counterproductive results. So he calls in his cousin, Lolas, and Lolas is watching, and he's saying, wait, he cut off 8 heads and it turned to 16, that's weird. And he has a realization, he goes, okay, I got it. Cut off those 16 heads, so he does. And before the 32 heads have a chance to regenerate, he cauterizes them with wax or something like that, so they can't grow back. Problem solved, except for the problem of the immortal head. So there's still the immortal head that cannot be destroyed. So he severs the immortal head, which doesn't kill it, of course, but he takes it and he shoves it under this giant boulder, which doesn't kill the head, but it neutralizes it. Now, what can we learn from this? This is very, 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 very basic interpretation, but it's important. So, of course, this is the imagistic form of a real life scenario in which whatever is being apprehended, whatever situation you are automatically and intimately subsumed in, is so overwhelming, complex, or nonlinear that traditional causal linear rationality and the traditional if X is a problem, do Y is actually a counter problem, right? And there's tons of examples of this, maybe interpersonally. So you can say, it's weird, my mom, I want her to do X, or she wants to do X, and doing Y is the best way of achieving this. So every time she says, I want to do X, I say, well, you can do Y. It's weird. She gets angry. She gets angry at me, and then she's less likely to do it. Every time I do it, she gets less and less likely to go to the gym, let's say, whatever it is. So this, using the Hydra myth and the image of Hydra cutting off the heads and the regenerative heads growing back, because I have that image, the image allows me to recognize, that's what this situation is. I'm not in a traditional causal linear rational situation. I'm in something way beyond that. I am in a situation that must be thought at from the side. It must be thought differently. I have to have Lolas come in and help me out because I can't do this on my own, right? So instead of saying, hey, Mom, if you want to do X, do Y, try another way. Try talking about something else. Try about indirectly talking about the benefits of being skinnier, example. My mom is beautiful, by the way. She's not, I just made that up. So this is a knowledge of wisdom of the universal soul that is so profound. And there are other examples as well. Let's say we have a government program that says, to eliminate X, we're going to do Y. And we institute Y, and X grows. So we have the rational causal linear thing, right? Okay, X, we'll say crime, or we'll say murders, is a problem. What we should do is institute the program that solves this problem rationally. Great. We institute the program, and murders go up. We're in a Hydra situation. Afghanistan, internationally, the U.S., terrorists exist. We want to decrease the amount of terrorists because they're going to kill us. What do? The simple, logical, linear, causal explanation. We bomb them. Here's the problem. When we bomb them, we create 10 more terrorists every time. So every 1,000 terrorists we kill, we've created 10,000. This is the Hydra effect. The image allows me to recognize this and allows me to pause and say, okay, let me try this. Now, in theory, you can come to this knowledge rationally, but you're going to have a couple problems. One, this rational knowledge is only after, emphasis on the temporal, the intuitive feeling of the situation. So you can have that same feeling of the situation, but not have the Hydra myth. But if you do that, without the myth, you're diluting all the resonance and all the efficaciousness and the time-tested, time-battled wisdom that this has. So you treat this like a one-off. This is why when we messed up in Iraq, we went back and messed up in Iraq again, and then we messed up in Afghanistan. If we would have just had the Hydra image in our mind, potentially, we could have been like, wait, this isn't a one-off. This is a problem. This isn't some weird exception. This is a problem. There are tons of things. And then if you have traditions and rituals in a culture built around that myth, maybe before every morning, there are all these Hydra statues in your town, and you just sort of touch it, or you put a coin in there or something. I don't know, I'm just making shit up. That is something rationality cannot account for. Neither the wisdom conferred and the knowledge process of that wisdom, or the understanding of the tradition at all. They just view it as this downstream effect of our irrational whatever, and as long as we get rid of it, we'll usher in our enlightenment utopia because we've miscategorized the human as a purely neutral, rational, logical person. Okay, so that's a quick example. I know that was a little long. I apologize. There's so much that is outside of rationality. I don't know what to say, man. Paul, you gotta read Gebser, man. You could have destroyed him here. You could have destroyed him. This is anti-rationalism 101. All right? Come on now.
What would be beyond reason? Well, like we talked about. I wish maybe we can pick a different example because it's less graphic, or we can just use the term CSAM. Is the AI CSAM? We can't. There's no way to run the study, like you said, ethically, of what would happen if we allow this technology to simply permeate society, sort of unregulated. Like once it happens, the cat's out of the bag. Or I guess you can, clamp down on it. So we can't know which I think you agreed to, right? You pointed that out. We actually can't run the study on whether or not.
Right. We have an intuitive awareness, intuitive knowledge that putting children in harm's way like this is wrong. And this knowledge is not some weird ephemeral voodoo. It is an accumulation of direct, intimate attachment with experience in the world, rather than this detached, rational, logical way of doing. We didn't logic our way into doing that. Okay, it's ridiculous. Paul, you're right about this. Intuition arises through becoming intimately aware of the qualities that charge the present moment. You can only do this through being directly subsumed and experienced in the world. Think of it like you're playing an athletic game. When I was young and I played soccer, I wasn't doing logical analysis. I was too busy in the game. But you can't do that, or my coach would have screamed at me.
We shouldn't run the study, because if I'm wrong, it would lead to horrific consequences.
Right. So the empirical evidence is lacking.
Right.
So that's beyond our reason. So the precautionary principle.
No. You see what you just did? It's not beyond our reason. In fact, you just reasoned to it.
No, you rationalized a bit of wisdom that you have learned through decidedly non-rational ways. Let me give you the example. The Hydra image I just did. You can have either the Hydra image, or you could take that, dilute it of all its efficaciousness, of all its emotional impact, and saying, don't apply, and you can formulate a rational rule that says, don't apply linear solutions in non-linear regressive feedback systems. What do you think is more resonant and more important to the soul? And what do you think came first? I would say Hydra came first, and if you even want to dispense of the Hydra myth, an intuitive awareness of the situation came first. So what he's talking about, you didn't come to it through reason. No, you rationalize it after the fact.
Okay, wait, go on. I'm confused. Hold on.
Well, you just used reason to figure that out. You didn't use tradition to figure that out. And so then you have a question of, right?
No, he used irrationality to figure that out. Rationality to figure this out would be what you did, and to dismiss it as irrational nonsense. He used irrationality.
Well,
you just reasoned to that proposition that we don't have enough empirical evidence. How do we figure it out? Again, if you want to say that... Well, how do you adjudicate between competing traditions? Or how do you... I don't buy that idea at all. I don't even... Why would you defer to tradition?
If reason or rationality is unable to solve this problem, we have to appeal to something else. And tradition is distilled and transmitted wisdom from thousands of years from millions of people who are facing the exact same circumstance that we faced. They weren't overwhelmed by the circumstance that we're facing precisely because of these valuable lessons that are being transmitted. If you want to say, how do you, the question he asked, how do you discern between competing traditions? If you want to say rationality should be evoked as a part of an integral whole, I think that's great. I mean, welcome to integral consciousness. I'm not necessarily trying to do this reason versus tradition. That's these guys' binary. That's not mine. I think they both integrate into a more holistic perception, both create and condition and inform each other, right? So, for example, like I talked about with our strongest intuitions that children should be protected. Okay, well, we invoke our rational faculties to actualize that. Okay, so if you attack a child, if you harm a child, you're going to jail. There are certain rules. You cannot have, there's children's bathrooms and all this stuff, right? There's certain rules. If you make baby shampoo, you can't just, burn people's little kids' scalps, right? They're not necessarily going against each other, but there are going to be times when rationality brushes up against its limits, so I don't think it's absurd to appeal to intuition unless you have a better thing going on.
Because like I said,
previous mimetic fitness, it allows creatures, organisms to adapt to their environments.
Religious traditions that are universal and deep are more likely to be true. I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true at all. In fact, it could be that traditions that have survived long enough are better at immiserating people and preventing them from accessing the method of error correction.
It's possible, but it's also possible that the wisdom of the universal soul, it's always going to be transmitted through myth, through tradition, through experience. It's never going to be, you're sticking with these surface level. I mean, what do you think is more resonant? The Hydra myth I talked about earlier, or the whole is greater than the part and the part is less than the whole? Like, come on.
Well, the if we agree that the fundamental mechanism of error correction is truthful speech, the ability to exchange ideas,
It's not.
and I would say truthfulness is the important component there.
And that's coupled with the ability to question first principles, which is a method of error correction, right? That's free speech. That's
right, but
liberty.
But and I guess maybe the analogy I'm using is reason is like a flashlight that you can shine on the world, and you can see things for what they are. And like if you're close to it, you can see like a rock as a rock, and you can then navigate in the world as such. If you're looking down a tunnel, the flashlight will show you like what's right in front of you, and then it'll get kind of. But then the light doesn't show you what's at the end of the tunnel, right? And so,
Paul, you are on it. Think of it like, a flashlight's a good example. What's the example I always use? A magnifying glass or a microscope, right? Remember, perspectivity. Rationality is discovered from the perspectivity, which is, say, the eye. So visual perception. When I'm looking at a magnifying glass, anything within that is conferred a higher degree of clarity, order, and depth, right? But there's obviously a world going on outside that magnifying glass. It's just not fitting into my visual precepts here. Same thing with perspectivity. If I'm on a mountain in Mount Ventoux, and I look out and I say, wow, I have the whole. I have all these beautiful mountains, I have the sky, I have all these birds, great. Obviously, there is an entire world going on around that is outside of your visual perception. It's just whatever is contained within that perception, again, is conferred a higher degree of clarity, order, and depth. Yes, this is perspectivity. Yes, this is a great, and the association with a tool, which is just like the spatial objects that the mental consciousness structure discloses. The mental consciousness structure ultimately discloses a certain mode of being, and that mode of being is that the world is inert matter that we can have and we can turn into tools, and that's exactly what he did. A flashlight is a tool, rationality is a tool. We guide it, it doesn't guide us. Or at the very least, there's a sort of integral symbiotic relationship.
So like, if the flashlight is my point is there are things at the end of the tunnel that reason and rational analysis can't get us to. Or I suppose we have to make assumptions, right? Like I can't prove that you're conscious, right? So am I entitled to believe that you're conscious? Or how would you? How do you rectify that? Because
that's a separate question. I think that the flashlight, in the history of philosophy, it's interesting. There's a long tradition of being as being seen, but I think it's really interesting that you chose to pick up the flashlight in the first place, as opposed to just defer to a particular tradition. So correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me that the conversation
actually that's actually that's an argument in favor of Paul here. There are going to be times when a flashlight isn't going to help you because all it's going to illuminate is hidden paths, dead ends, closed ends, right? What you need is someone who, through years of tradition, through years of experience, direct experience, not in a little tool using to do it, right? The direct experience, they know the forest inside and out, even in the dark. So tradition and a set procedure can actually lead you through the forest. If rationality cannot illuminate the dark, why would you ever appeal to it to understand that darkness? You would have to understand those who are like Bane, born in the dark, right? There you go. I don't think that's a very good argument at all.
It is at a juncture now where it's between traditions that are not rationally derivable versus things that are rationally derivable, but you do not have sufficient evidence to justify high levels of confidence in those propositions.
Yeah.
Okay, so if that's true, why? Correct me if I'm wrong now, but your argument is that we ought to defer to traditions because they've been adaptive and they've allowed us to get to where we are.
With all kinds of caveats, because it depends on the tradition. Yeah. Because there's a Christian apologetic argument that they try to undermine the theory of evolution by saying.
All right, I think we'll stop there. This was pretty interesting. I had a fun time doing this. I'm interested in doing more videos like this. And let me know what you guys think. Let me know where I went wrong. I'm sure you will. And thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you guys so much for watching to the end. If any of these two guys want to talk, just reach out and let me know, my friends. I love you. I will see you soon. And happy Easter, by the way. I hope you guys have a great Easter. Love you guys. Thank you, all of you. And Paul, you need to read John Gebser, all right? Peter, you should read John Gebser too, but I don't think you're going to. Paul, you're already going down that lane. You might as well have the wise sage lead you down the forest, right? I love you guys. I will see you soon. You're the best.